Welcome again to Halo Love and Country. And Halo doesn't stand for that we're angels here in the studio. It stands for High Altitude Low Opening, which is this Army maneuver where you jump out of an airplane and you open your parachute very close to the ground to avoid getting shot, killed, seen, all of that, which stands as a metaphor for what LGBTQ people go through in this world and what they particularly go through in the military. But today, we're focused a little bit different. We're focused on what LGBTQ people might go through with the current repression of immigrants in our country. And if we know our history, we know this has been a, what's the word for it? It's kind of a recurrent theme. But before we get into that, I want to introduce again, say hello to Mitch McDonald over here, actor, film producer, producer of this broadcast, and we're here to continue the conversation. We hope you will join in too with your comments. Please, if you like what goes on in here, please subscribe and like below. And you can also catch, Love and Country. So we dealt with the Halo part. Love and Country is the name of a movie about two gay men during the Vietnam War who fall in love during combat and all of the risks that they put up with. In addition to just being in freaking combat, the risks of being gay and in love in the military in Vietnam. And then I have a novel by the same name that's out by Northampton Press. So catch all those if you can. But we're glad you're here today. And we've been hearing about the immigration raids all over the country. I'm here near Los Angeles. We have the National Guard in our city over, I don't know quite why they're here. We have the Marines down in Orange County, and everyone's saying hello to them, and it's mostly a peaceful time. We got a lot of demonstrations going on, a lot of protests going on, and they're getting bigger all the time. But we're sort of a militarily occupied region here. If you could do that over the I don't know how many 100 square miles we have here of territory in Southern California. But they're here, and they're reminding us of that the federal government wants to repress immigrants and people of color. Because immigrants, most of them are people of color. But today, I'm going to talk about a little bit of a different example of this. And this is an LGBTQ white guy. He's an Irish immigrant. His name is Edward Lee Stenton, okay? And this has been picked up by the foreign press. So I actually found the best description of what happened here in the United States from the Belfast Telegraph of July 13th. And it says, a Northern Irish man living in the U.S. faces deportation after being detained by immigration. Edward Lee Stenton, known as Lee, was subjected, allegedly, this is what we're hearing, subjected to a traffic stop by police in Key West because he apparently, or at least allegedly, rode through a stoplight or something on his electric bicycle. ICE, the infamous immigration agency, soon detained him for not having his immigration documents at hand, despite possessing the proper papers, according to his father. In other words, he probably had his green card with him, but he didn't have all the papers it took to get him. I don't know what that means exactly. In my case, I'm married to a Thai man. We came to the country with, and I'm not kidding you, 700 pieces of paper that made up a file about this thick, something like that. And I don't know, was he supposed to be carrying these papers with him? I don't know. Although it is kind of interesting that they arrested a white guy, because most of what we see is racially based identification of people. So what they must have done is, I'm just making this up now, they must have run his name through based on a traffic stop and found out that somehow he was, or maybe his identification, he showed a green card. We don't know. In the meantime, he's in jail. He's a hairdresser, very popular within the Miami area. And where is he in jail at? Let's see. His U.S.-born husband, legally married husband, is reporting a lot of this. So Edward has a green card. He's on track. He has a work visa. He's arrested, but he did not have his immigration papers. I don't know what that means. His mother is in Ireland is out of her mind. They won't tell his attorney how long he'll be in custody. He might be deported. I don't know why. He's a valued member of so he's in Key West, not Miami. He has earned the trust and respect of colleagues. He's been paying taxes. So this is more of what we see from the Trump administration. And we'd love to have Edward on our show, but we can't. And why is that? Because he's in jail. What do you think, Mitch?
Well, on the lack of on sort of the confusion about his paperwork, I would not be overly surprised if a lot of immigrants, as we already know, most of them come legally, and then they simply overstay whatever permissions they had. When you go to court, you'll go through however many hoops they lay out for you, and at the end, you're given permission to continue staying, or you're told, all right, this is the end. You've got X number of days to conclude your business here and leave the country. And if you're told to pack up your business and leave the country, it's as simple as just not going to court again and then staying far enough out of trouble that nobody has to deal with the fact that you are here illegally. On the other side of that, you could show up for a work visa and simply never go home. And you could find yourself living in the United States 20 years later on an expired work visa that you never went back and had appropriately adjusted. You never made an effort to, get your green card or whatever status you needed to hunt up. We might want to have someone on who can really talk to you about that process of especially for folks coming here from south of our border. It's extensive and quite insane, and I'm going to assume it's the same for everybody. So I would assume that he didn't have his papers because they were expired versus them saying you need to carry your papers on you at all times. And then I would further assume that as what is likely to be a visibly white man, you can be Irish and not present as Caucasian. I would assume that because we have set up a system now where they have to do 3,000 detentions a day, he was one more on a list. He was one more tick they needed to get. And just as likely, the police officer just felt like, hey, you're here illegally, and I don't really care what color you are. It could go a million different ways. I am going to assume that he is not being as desperately mistreated as many of our other immigrant population are, but not knowing where he is in his exact conditions, that's a little almost racism on my part. Screw the man, down with the system.
Well, he apparently, this is further on in the article, apparently he's sleeping on the floor and cannot take a shower, cannot change his clothes, cannot do anything of that. So it sounds
And how
like,
long did you say he's been detained?
oh, it was very recently. He's still in jail. Doesn't say.
All right. Well, I mean, and that still ends in the same place too. You know, those statements of his conditions are the same for almost everyone in immigration detention. They are they're crammed into very small spaces. They're not given good food. They're not given proper exercise or access to the out. I mean, you know, the prisoners in our jails, for the most part, have it better because there are laws, there is monitoring, and we have decided under the Trump administration that we don't have to treat them like human beings. You know, the whole alligator Alcatraz thing, and uh, uh, I was looking at another podcaster who was calling it Donald's Dachau, which I like the sound of that much better because it's far more truthful. It's not a jail. It is a concentration camp, and it is just a first stage concentration camp. They're getting maggots in their food. They're having their religious homes taken away from them. They're intentionally not being allowed to uh, exercise and interact. They're just being kept in awful conditions. But that's what happens when you start pulling 3,000 people a day off the streets for no real reason,
Right. You
no
don't
real
even.
preparation. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like we don't move large numbers of people through the immigration system, but we do it by saying your paperwork is out of order. Here is your court date. Be at court on this day. And if you think that when you're in the position to give them the paperwork, if you feel like they're not going to show up, or that they will run, or they will hide, um, or that you've done this with them before and they are a danger, then you incarcerate them. Otherwise, you let the system do what the system does at the pace the system does it. There was an interview of President Trump where he was saying, you know, what are you going to do? Have 3 million trials? Yeah, you're going to have 3 million trials. Every single person in the system gets their day in court. That's the country we live in. That's the system we have. We don't just have some weirdo in his tin hat deciding the final
Yeah, and
day.
yet that's not going to happen. We're not going to have 3 million trials.
Well, we could have 3 million trials. We would just have them over the course of 5 years.
But we're not
Instead
going
of
to.
But we're not going to. Yeah, a lot of those
We
people are
just,
never going to see a court date.
yeah, because Holman and the crowd that's around him have figured out that when you do the fait accompli, when they're out of the country, they're out of mind. And that will completely disrupt their lives. That will take away all their well, I assume they take away their financial support. They'll be in a foreign country. They'll appear to be criminals to the people that are taking them because they've broken the law in the United States. It's, you know, you don't have to, it just shortcuts all of the difficult aspects of being a democratic country. And a democratic country has all this bureaucracy and rules and regulations and ways of treating people. It slows down the wheels of justice and frequently stops injustice. But if you just get them out of the country, they're gone. Problem is gone. And why do we need people out of what's behind all this in the American character that is we need to find people on the street and get rid of them. Why is that? What is it about us that makes us that way? I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Well, no, and I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more of a okay. So
My thinking is that it has to do with underlying racism and xenophobia. Is that these people are either a different color than us, or they're of a different language than us. They're different than us, and for some reason that is a major threat to for many people. Yeah.
And that's true. And that's true every place that you have a majority population that feels like it is somehow different than this minority group that it is decided it's going to go after. When we were, okay, so one of the things I was looking up on this overall issue, there are let me look at my number, 1.25 million immigrants in California, just California. And of that number, looking at here,
I'll
and then
bet
of
there's
that
more than
number,
that.
you
You
can
mean
expect between like,
illegal folks or legal folks?
no, just immigrants, period. Just immigrants,
Immigrants,
period.
period. That
1.25
was a
million.
lot more than that.
Well, okay, then I assume we're talking about legal immigrants. This number doesn't, so we'll have to assume this number does not track um, the illegal population. But the point ends up being the same. Okay, so we have 1.25 million legal immigrants in California, and you would expect between 5 and 10% of that number to be gay. Just by default, they'd have to be part of the LGBTQ community, which puts you at 125,000 people. And of that population, you can expect 1% of them, predictably, to be trans or non binary, and that would be around 12,000 people. But that number is actually 40,000 plus. So, number one, speaking to your point, the country that they are from is looking at them as being other and driving them out. And
Yes.
they've gone to another location, somewhere in Europe, somewhere here, looking for safety and protection and opportunity, an opportunity to live their life.
We used to think of them as refugees. Yes.
Yes, we used to think of them as refugees. Um, so going back to where your point is, you can pick anybody and decide that they are not like us and they don't deserve to be here without it being something as obvious as color. We can chase off the Jews because they're not part of our religion, and we can start ascribing all kinds of antisocial behavior to them, and until people begin to look at them in a way that says it's not so bad when you make them disappear, even if the basis of your statements is not true. And you can do the same thing with homosexuals who may not stand out at all, except for they are having sex in a way that you don't think is right. Um, uh, you could do it with people who are in your community that look just like you, but their background happens to be from a region that doesn't quite fit. We're Russian, but you're Ukrainian.
Hmm.
Um, we're English, you're Welsh. You can always find a way to other somebody if it.
And it doesn't have to be racial at all. It can just be,
Yeah,
it can be
yeah,
religious or language or,
yes,
yeah, or
um,
sexual orientation in this case. Yeah.
right,
And,
and
and,
so
well, I'm just saying trans people, it's really, really difficult for them to hide in any way. Or just like someone with lighter skin or darker skin can't hide who they are.
well, it's hard to
And
hide who
trans,
you are when you're trying to be authentic. When your goal is to live your truth, it is hard, but that's hard for everybody because
to be free.
there's
Yeah.
the comedian um, uh, Louis C.K. talked talks about how his grandfather left wherever he was in Europe, went to Mexico, and listed himself as being Catholic. Just gave up. He was Jewish, and he's like, nope, done. I'm Catholic. You can go. You can choose to go where you want to go and blend in where you want to blend in, and you can choose to stay where you are in the first place and just blend in. But the problem there is, of course, that they may eventually discover you, even though you're trying super hard to blend in, and you may find yourself punished anyway. Um,
Well, and that's what bisexual people do. There's a lot more bisexual people than there are gay people. But bisexual people frequently, at least in my generation, because I'm bisexual, it's easier for us to find a way to fit in, marry a woman, or in the case of a woman, marry a man, or whatever keeps you from dealing with the hatred of the majority. And it's an
Yes.
understandable way of doing things, It's understandable. And of course, if you can fit, you hope everyone can fit in, at least my hope, is that everyone can fit in a culture if they basically follow the law, basically, um, in the case of immigration, go through the process. That would be my preference. But wait till you try to do the process. Oh my God, sometimes it's just very, very difficult to stay within the law, stay within the rules, particularly if the country you're going to doesn't even agree on what the rules are. I mean, one of the reasons we've had no immigration reform is because there's huge chunks of people simply don't agree with each other what to do. So nothing is done. You know, so you have this
Well, yeah, okay,
weird bureaucratic system.
right, okay, and yes, but no. Um, like right now, we're dealing with the situation of during the Biden administration, we set up TPS, uh, temporary protected status, and we did that for a lot of people like the Venezuelans and the Cameroonians and people from Afghanistan, and we have bent over every one of those groups because effectively by using that program and that was set up by the government, coming in the right way, they have only made themselves more easy to track and more easy to deport. If they had snuck in here over the border, they would just be more people on the street, and you'd have to find them in order to deport them. Instead, they're here, their names, their addresses, their associations, their work, all in a database somewhere, and they have court dates that they have to go to, and a lot, and as we have seen, ICE sits at the courthouse and waits for you to come out of your your court appointed your court set date that they don't even necessarily have to at the end of the court date have said, okay, well, we appreciate you coming in, but we're not going to let you stay here anymore, you've got 30 days to get out. They just have to walk out of the courtroom, and ICE decides, and today is the day you're being deported, even though you've done everything you're supposed to do, and the judge has you with future court dates and other things are going to be happening. No, you're actually an immigrant, and we, the agents of ICE, have just now decided you need to be deported.
Because we
Um,
have 3,000 arrests to do today. Yes.
yes, because we have 3,000 arrests to do today. Our docket says 50, we're getting our 50. And we're going to start at the courthouse because we know where they are. And then we're going to lie to people. We're going to use court information. We're going to go to people's houses and lie to them about who we are. And we're going to arrest them. And then we're going to go to their place of business. And then when we run out of all that, we're just going to start snatching people off the street who look like they might be from somewhere else.
Put on your
Because they can,
mask.
yeah,
Put on your mask
yeah.
and go grab somebody off the street. Boy, what does that feel like? That masked men kidnapping people off the street. It's just wow.
And
Has that fascist feel to it? Has that Argentina disappearing, um, uh, Mussolini feel to it. It's just
right,
and
well,
I
and
guess
I would probably say that's not a fascist feel. That is a fascist fact. And I am still waiting. It's already starting to bubble up. People just going, you know what? You can't be taken. You don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know what they're going to do to you. Someone pointed out I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago where someone pointed out, like, when you see all these discussions about people being snatched off the street and being incarcerated, we're talking about men. You see one guy after another being in a cell somewhere. There are no conversations about where the women go. The women are being taken. Where are they? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if that's a news bias where they're just not, they haven't decided to show us that part yet, or just for the sake of ease, it's easier to get to where the men are. But it's a question, and we've actually had people bring up the fact that there are flights that leave with ICE detainees that never land anywhere, but still return without the people who were on board.
So where did they go?
Yeah, so where did they go?
Well, what they used to do in Argentina, what worked out really well, put them on a military airplane, go out over the sea, and push them out the door. 30,000 people missing in Argentina. 30,000.
Right, and when you have a U.S. tracked military airplane that you know had people on board that never landed anywhere but comes back empty, I mean, you can look at that as it just being a question of time until the wheels of justice find their way. I mean, if people are being thrown out of planes by our government,
Well,
it's
we
bad
did
enough
it in
that they're.
Vietnam. We did.
Well, yes, we did it in Vietnam.
But then wait a minute, but they were dark-skinned people. Oh, wait a minute, so are these. Huh. No, that's what used to go. Yeah, that was an interrogation technique. Take them up in a helicopter and get information. If you didn't get it, or even if you did, just throw them out. Easy way to. I didn't do that, but I sure heard enough stories about it. And
right.
Of course, I wouldn't do anything like that. I don't know. No, but to whatever extent we all participate in this, we are scaring, and this is what fascism likes to do. It scares people, and it scares people into submission and doing what the leader wants.
Okay, but and that's where I was going is. At this point, it has to scare people not into doing what they want, but into resisting them. You cannot be taken at this point. You don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know if you'll survive it. You don't know what your conditions will be. You already know you're not going to be treated fairly. So but my point was that you're starting to see that. You're starting to see crowds getting in the way in a much more meaningful, direct way. They're actively trying to separate the agents from the people they're taking, and they're actively running away. They're finding somewhere else to be, which is easier when it's a street sweep. Like if they come to your house, they know who you are. There's not a lot of option. How far can you run? They know your associates, they know your family, they know your work. Where you can go to get away is very, very limited. But if they're just snatching you off the street, they don't know who they were trying to grab. They just know you were brown enough to fit the bill. Your hair was the right coarseness. Your accent was appropriate. So we're taking you. It doesn't mean you're not a citizen. We never asked that. And when we do ask that, we've had incidents where, dude, here's my ID. I'm a U.S. citizen.
Don't matter. We have suspicions. You're in our database. We need 3,000. You're under arrest. You have no rights whatsoever.
Yeah. Right. And and so far, we have not deported an actual U.S. citizen. We've deported people who had every right to be here. But under this current situation, we have not deported an actual U.S. citizen. That's eventually going to change, especially when Trump has.
Have we deported a green card holder yet? Have you seen? I haven't noticed that.
I believe. We have detained.
Well,
I cannot swear to God that we have deported, but we have detained green card holders, multiple.
Well, yeah, Edward Stinson is a green card holder. He has a work permit, but I suspect somewhere under the law, if you break a major, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what the law. The law probably, if you had a felony, you could be deported from your green card. But I would suspect you'd have to be convicted of that. And if you're talking about a normal system, we don't have a normal system anymore. We have I don't want to say it. I'm trying not to say it. I won't say fascism. I won't say a fascist.
Fascism.
There we go. I wanted you to say it. So we just bypass the courts. We don't care. We want them out of the country. They look wrong. They are wrong. And we have orders, 3,000. That 3,000 really, we got to get cracking here. Nothing's happening to us when we beat people, when we wear masks, when we make illegal arrests. Nothing's happening to anyone for doing it. We could just do more of it. We'll do more of it. Although I did see something the other day that kind of concerned me. So we're in LA. It's basically been peaceful here. The protests, I mean, I think the worst they got was burning cars a couple of weeks ago. But there's a lot of marching, and a lot of people are just showing up. A lot of people are showing up. And they're showing up here in Orange County too. But I saw a video the other day where a guy in Los Angeles, he was running away, and I saw his hand go up with a handgun, and he goes, bang. Have you heard about that one? Someone actually fired at the police. So there's a $50,000 reward for him to be found. Good luck ever finding him. But it's the beginning. And there's going to be hotheads, and there's going to be principled people that are going to use violence. And of course, that will give permission to Trump and the fascist folks to break more laws, use more force, send in the airborne division.
Well, and speaking in terms of your vicinity, I don't fully understand. Like, I was under the impression that when Trump was saying that he bounced around between justifications for how he could legally send in troops at various different locations and times. But I was under the impression that when he sent the troops to California, that as he was sending federal troops to a state, the governor had a say in that. The governor had the ability to say yes or no. From Arkansas, I'm in Arkansas. I'm not from Arkansas. I'm in Arkansas, so with integration of Little Rock schools, I understand that the president can send troops in, the governor can say no, and the troops stay. Okay, I 100% get that. What I don't understand is how there hasn't been a process set in place where they say, okay, ICE is running its program. They have backup from the Marines. The job of the police is not to back up the cops, or rather, is not to back up the Marines or to back up ICE. It's to make sure that the citizenry is out of the way and safe. And realistically, in my mind, every time ICE tries to grab someone, all the cops have to do is say, where's your warrant for this one? And if they don't have a warrant, then the cops just get to say, let them go. You don't have jurisdiction over this person. You don't have a warrant. And I mean, because to me, if the governor and the mayor want a fight, that's where the fight is. And I don't, I do not have my degree in legal issues, so I don't understand how that doesn't work that way, or why it cannot be made to work that way, particularly when we see Trump breaking every rule in the book every day. His government breaking every rule in the book every day. His government lying and misleading and ignoring the courts and law every day. You can't fight that kind of lawlessness with law.
No.
They're turning the system against us, and people are starting to come out with, they're talking about ways to use the system against itself. Particularly, we just had this finding that judges are no longer allowed to make nationally inclusive stays on different laws. And there have been at least 2 points made on that. One, that it actually, the finding is that they can't do, a federal judge can't do that to Trump himself. He can't do it to the president, but the president is not the one enforcing the law, or putting the law in action. So if he makes a law like this that impacts ICE, then they can put the exclusion on ICE directly, which isn't the same thing as putting it on Trump. And then somebody else pointed out that if every person who has to try to get their rights back through a lawsuit has to do it individually, then you could very quickly choke out the federal court system by everybody who is affected putting in cases. And to a degree, that requires some from some very disingenuous behavior. You have to have a lot of money to move a case through the courts, and if you have an attorney who's willing to file 5,000 cases, knowing
Well,
perfectly well
it's kind. I
that
think
5,000
using
three are going to show up.
using the court is kind of an open question now. I think it's kind of like how effective is it going to be, because there's been several hundred lawsuits now against the Trump administration. California itself, I don't know if you heard that one. I don't know if that I can quote it in any accurate way, that made illegal Trump's use of the National Guard in California. Did you see that one?
I did not.
It was a federal court case, and I don't know, it's probably being appealed, but California appropriated $25 million for lawsuits against the federal government. And it's joining with other states, and I don't know if this was one of those or if that came from the city of Los Angeles or what. But
okay, I think I do remember that part, but it was talking about it but it only covered like 7 counties. It was like class action, but it only covered like 7 counties.
Oh, yeah, it might be true. Yeah, that would make sense. That has to be very limited. It has to be the people directly affected. But Trump can always appeal it. I mean, that's their, what's the word? That's their strategy. Do what's illegal. See if there's pushback. If there's legal pushback, appeal it. Hope the right-wing Supreme Court will eventually approve it. If it's not illegal, if it's just people in the street, send in the troops. If it's at the ballot box, there's the next one I'm wondering about. I mean, what used to go on in our country is stuff the ballot box. Why change voting rights ability? Just change the votes. I have lost my caution or limits on what they might do, what a reactionary regime like Trump might do. They keep surprising me because they keep doing more and more illegal stuff. So it's a crazy time, difficult time for an immigrant to be here in this country. And I would just, if I was them, I would just be hiding. We had a transsexual housekeeper for a while, a couple of years ago. And I know she's just a master of hiding. She lives in a whole world, is as much divorced from the system as she can. And I don't know if she's been effective or not. I'm almost afraid to ask her. Her husband was from Mexico. He came back and forth across the border. There was a whole shadowy world, which I don't. We had another friend we found out was doing the transport of folks from the border to places in California, Southern California, for employment. And it was probably illegal. She got arrested. But there's a whole underground economy. Just like there was, I don't know how underground it is, how there used to be a whole underground drug network, which absolutely evades 99% of law enforcement. And I'm still does. It works. People want drugs.
We've been selling drugs in this country as long as the country has been here. It's just who's taking the opportunity today, not a question of whether or not it's going to happen, just who's going to do it. Whether it's, the Russian mafia, the Japanese mafia, the Korean mafia, black gangs.
All the Irish mafia. The Irish were big on bootlegging and running booze. Joseph Kennedy, John Kennedy's father's background was in bootlegging. So and I'm thinking there's a whole and it's going to get even more powerful, the whole underground system of immigrants who are hiding and find ways to hide. And I think we should help them, frankly. Whoops, That sounded illegal. No, we shouldn't. We should never do that. I'm kidding. I was just kidding. Just kidding.
Um,
Not and not
well,
not. I am not advocating illegal behavior
no, no, certainly not.
unless you have to. And then I just want to tell you it's illegal. By the way.
I think what I was looking at was, I'm sorry, I was listening to what you were saying, and so I was thinking that there are portions of this that are less about the trouble they're in while they're here. Well, I mean, actually, we're not even talking about the trouble they're in while they're here, because a lot of the people we're talking about are being sent away without appropriate cause, just because of the right color, right accent, whatever. Um, and in terms of the LGBTQ community, in terms of women, um, depending on where they're immigrating from, um, there are just very high rates of people who have to come here. Like, I mean, if you came here because you were gay and you were threatened, if you came here because you were trans and you were threatened, you fall into that line of sexual violence.
Right.
Uh, and if you're coming from an African country, I believe that it said that the information I had read before was saying that the rate of sexual violence claims, I'm coming to the United States because I am facing sexual violence where I'm from, is like 90%, because we know that there's a very strong Christian presence in Africa that says you're gay.
Right.
And it's not, and it's not about ostracizing you. It's about killing you.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
walk
There's
through the village.
Yeah. Some of the African countries have the death penalty for
Right,
homosexual
exactly,
behavior. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
if you're coming from, the southern portions of North America, Central America, I can't really say about South America. The rate for that is closer to 50%, but it's still there. It's still a problem. Um, and I'd be really curious to see what the rate of Americans going to Europe to avoid issues of I felt oppressed
Yeah.
and I felt like my life was at hazard in the United States because I'm gay.
Yeah.
We know there are plenty of people that left here through the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Was founded in the late 1800s by people fleeing. Well, no, that wasn't in the late 1800s, but well, maybe that was. My knowledge of Liberia is slipping in my head. But that's a country completely founded by American formerly enslaved people who worked with other organizations, pulled together the money, and got out of here. So
Went back to Africa. Went to
yeah, and went back to
founded
Africa.
Liberia. Right.
And it's there's sort of a question there of like how many of them, even that late in the game, we were not necessarily pulling people out of Africa anymore. We had stolen so many people. You just sort of breed them in their boxes, and then you don't have to worry about going somewhere to get them because that's expensive. So there's a question of like how many generations would you have to go back before someone in their line even actually came over from Africa, was dragged here from Africa, was sold into slavery from Africa, versus they were in the Caribbean, they were sent over, they were bought in Europe, whatever. Um, uh, but yeah, the rates of the issues that come with being a woman, and with being of any non-heterosexual orientation, um, in the wrong society, that's a death sentence, and this society is one of them.
Yeah. Well, apparently the Iranians are still hanging gay people, and the Saudi Arabians, I don't know if they've cut off any heads lately of gay folk, but it's a capital offense, I believe, in Saudi Arabia. At least it's against the law. Despite, by the way, having one of the highest gay pornography rates in the world in Saudi Arabia. It's very, very high. So it's dangerous to be LGBTQ in the military. It's dangerous to be LGBTQ in Africa in a lot of places. It's dangerous to be an immigrant that's LGBTQ. And we don't yet know what if anything, they're doing differently for LGBTQ people. Because you wonder about Edward, okay? So he's on his electric bicycle and he goes through a traffic light and the police stop him. Well, he's a hairdresser. Maybe he acts more effeminate because I don't know, because that's his orientation, his physical makeup, his emotional makeup, the way he was born. And so he comes off, I'm just making it up now, but it would certainly make sense. He acts a little bit effeminate.
Just telling stories or making up as they go, yes.
Absolutely. Well, he is, and he's got a green card. Oh my God. He's a gay, illegal immigrant. I mean, it's got to be 5 to 10% of the 3,000. It'll make him up, Let's take him in. It's an arrest, isn't it, Harry? Yeah, it's an arrest. Okay, take him down. He didn't have his Form 3122-56 on his person. Doesn't matter if he had his green card. Doesn't matter if he has a work permit. None of that matters. He committed a major offense. He rode his bicycle through a red light. I mean, yeah. So, everybody, they're coming for people of color. They're coming for people with different languages. They're coming for people that are LGBTQ. What did they say about the Jews in Europe? They're coming for everyone else, but what happens when they come for you? When are they going to come for you?
Our memory of history is just too short. We have a difficulty keeping a grip on things that happened, 10, 20 years ago, much less something that happened in our grandparents' or great-grandparents' generation. I don't know who said that. There was someone who said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing the same things happen again. Down to Trump using, World War I, World War II, racist slogans. And more every day you see people throwing, these Nazi salutes and not catching a brick in the head. There was and unfortunately because of the state of technology in the modern age, I saw a video the other day of some guy throwing a Nazi salute at Vice President Vance, and then Vance shook his hand, and it's like, okay, I didn't see this. I have no way to verify that this actually happened. But that doesn't look faked, and unfortunately, that's not a standard. So you have to rely on the news to cover this stuff, and the news media is running scared. With no cause, they are running scared. The Trump administration is coming after them with such weak cases that if they wanted to actually fight him, they absolutely could. I cannot tell you the number of judges and attorneys who I've heard, who I've watched and read saying, these are weak cases, and I don't believe that they would actually stand up through the court system. But these people fold, and I understand that some of them fold for financial reasons, that they're trying to get their merger through, and they're not going to get it past the Trump administration if they're fighting them when it happens. But that doesn't feel like a good excuse either.
Well, let's shift a little bit. So we've kind of been talking about the problem. What can we do about it? What can you and I do? We're talking about it. That's something. What other actions can we take? What actions should we take? I go to a protest from an organization called Indivisible. I went to another protest from something called Hands Off. And they've had various themes to them. Many of them are grassroots protests. And you can go and you can show up and hold a sign, wave to your neighbors, get to know the other people that feel the same way you do. You can now. What else can we do? We can vote. We can. It's coming up in the midterms in 2026.
You assume we will have elections in 2026. You assume we will have elections in 2028.
That's right. It's a big assumption, isn't it?
At this point, it is, and that's even scarier.
Because what would a good fascist do?
Yeah,
They would
elections.
suspend elections because of too much violence, too much disruption. I'm sorry, we can't have elections. We'll have them 2 years from now. We promise.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think I would say the easiest road is malicious compliance. They're setting up information lines. Call us if you know this. Call us if you know that. Post it to this website. That's fine. Give them all the information they can stand. Block the lines up with, is it actionable? Can they do something with it in any practical way? That guy on the corner with all the Trump flags, I am almost positive he is Mexican. You're probably going to have to come down here and figure out if he's an illegal Mexican yourself, but that guy's here. He's right on the corner from my house, and I don't trust him. If you work for the federal government and you're seeing the stuff that's happening, there is always a possibility of backing up enough information and sliding it out in the right direction that somebody is going to see it. It is so common that a protective filter just goes down, and information that's not supposed to be publicly visible just finds itself publicly visible. That happens. As we saw not that long ago, a reporter can be pulled into a very important upper level meeting and get all kinds of information because somebody hit the wrong button. Oops. There are, we need help from the inside. We need help from the ground. And in my book, malicious compliance is the most immediately effective thing you can do, particularly from the people who are still inside the Trump administration, who don't want to be there but don't want to be living on the street either. And I totally get that. Again, that's a financial factor, and I totally understand it. But we have to do, as you just said, we have to do something. It can't just be complaining. It can't just be standing by.
Well, thank you, Mitch, for again being with us. This has been our presentation on Halo, Love, and Country. And again, see the movie, Love and Country, buy the book, Love and Country, like and subscribe. We're very gradually growing our audience. And we hope you'll come back and share, but also share, if you like what you're hearing, share it with your friends. We're always happy to have other voices too. If you don't agree with this, put your comment in and just say what you don't agree with. It's the thing we really want is freedom in this country. We want liberty for all,